Welcome back to another sports podcast, everybody, because it's exactly what the world needs is another sports podcast. We're the Sweaty Trio. We're glad to be back in the locker room as always. Today is a really special episode for the boys and viewers alike. Our guest today has been a household name for almost 3 decades. If there's a big game in Canada, chances are this guy's steering the ship and the cameras towards the action. He's done everything from NHL coverage to World Juniors, Olympics, Grey Cups, and more, and sometimes even did it with a monkey on his shoulder. He's a storyteller through and through. He's told his own stories, like playing hockey without a jock, and he's told the greatest untold stories from around the NHL. He's a multiple time award winner, a Canadian Screen Award magnate, an Ottawa Sports Hall of Famer, an author, and one of the cleanest hosts to ever touch a studio desk. Please welcome the face of Canadian sports broadcasting, James freaking Duthie.
Wow, that was a good intro.
Hey man, for a goat like you coming into the locker room, we want to make sure that you are like, we need to put you on that pedestal because that's where you belong.
Yeah, no, I felt really good about myself after that.
Thank you so much.
I needed a little boost. I've had a rough day, and like now I feel great. Thanks, boys.
Well,
I appreciate being on.
I was gonna say we might bring your day a little bit down now that we're gonna talk about the young James Duthie.
Oh
So
God,
I've heard that you moved around a lot, being that your father was RCMP.
yeah.
Um, what was the dream back then growing up? Was the dream always to be a broadcaster in sports?
No, the dream was to be an athlete, right? Like I think that's what most of our dreams are when if we love sports when we're a kid, right? You mentioned hockey. I pretty much knew I wasn't going to make it in hockey. I lived in Victoria when I was a kid, and that story you told off the top. When I hadn't skated when I moved to Ottawa when I was 8 years old, so I was way behind everybody. Like I went from a completely non-hockey town where all we do is play soccer to a complete hockey town. Hadn't even skated, so my dad didn't buy me a jock because he didn't think that people could raise the puck and he was cheap. So uh, yeah, I was very lucky that I came away clean on that. But so yeah, I don't think I ever. The only thing I was delusional. Football was kind of like my favorite sport by the time I got to high school, and I lied to myself because I thought I was a pretty good high school football player, and I thought that I was going to play in the NFL, which is hilarious now looking back on it because I'm like 5'10". In high school, I think I played football at 152, and I was a defensive back with like mediocre speed, right? So I had no chance. But if you look at my high school yearbook, I've said this before, I intended to go to Clemson because I was in love with Clemson University because the cheerleaders had these paws on their face. And like that was my fantasy, was to date a cheerleader with a paw on her face. And so I actually wrote a letter to Clemson basically saying, hey, I'm a cornerback at Gloucester High School. I'm pretty awesome. You guys probably want to look at me. And my high school yearbook says James going to go to Clemson and play for the 49ers. And I actually like believed that in grade 12 or whatever when I wrote it. So somewhere along the way I woke up and I think I figured if I wasn't going to be a football player, then I wanted to do something in sports and end up taking journalism to be broadcasting. So now I think that I probably had that at the back of my mind. Like, I think I've written about this in one of my earlier books. I did, when I was 14, 15, I think we've all done this. Tell me if you guys did this. Do you ever turn down the TV and do your own play-by-play?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like everybody, we've all done that, I think, right? And so I would do that definitely for hockey and for NFL and CFL. And so definitely that thought crossed my mind, but I didn't think it was remotely possible back then. Like didn't remote. I've said this before. I just wanted to be the local sportscaster in Ottawa that covered the Ottawa 67s and like the Ottawa freaking Rough Riders or whatever. And that was my dream. I didn't think about covering all the things that you were kind enough to say off the top.
What was the moment for you where you realized I'm not just a broadcaster, I'm part of Canadian sports culture?
I don't think until you said it in the intro, I don't think I've ever thought that.
Right now,
I'm serious. No, I don't know. You guys can say that. I don't. That's a weird thing. I do have, I've been on. I think it's more just being on TV for a long time. I do have a lot of people, whether it's at the book signings or if I'm at the World Juniors or something, who will come and say, I've watched you my whole life, which makes me feel super old. But it is. I've realized it's true, right? I started at TSN in '98. So how old are you guys? 20?
I'm a 96. I'm the oldest one.
Me and Michael are
so
99s.
So yeah, so there you were like little babies pooping all over your mom's thing when I was starting the TSN, which is ludicrous, right? So I do realize that guys like you have, your entire life watching TV. I've sort of been that pain in the ass that I've been on there all the time. So, um, and that's, I take it as a sincere compliment when people say that, because sticking around is not always the easiest thing in this business, I guess. So, but I don't know, culture. I don't know. That's a weird thing for me to wrap my head around. So
He's humble. He's
yeah,
humble.
I
no,
think
I
it's
don't
fair
know.
to
I mean,
say you've been
I
at
don't
some of the
know.
biggest moments and you've bore witness to some of the most Canadian sports moments in history,
Yeah,
whether it be
yeah,
World Juniors or Grey Cups or Olympics.
yeah.
Anything
Well,
and
without
everything.
without I'm not here to just promote books, honestly, but I'm currently, my next book is going to be about that. Is that the publisher said to me, and I was the first time I really thought about it, I think, is said, you've been at all these big events. Why don't you write a book just with your memories of all the big events you were at? And when I started to sort of make a list, thinking about how I was going to write the book, you're right. Like I started to think, okay, like 2010, and I was lucky enough to do like the Raptors run, and all the Brady Super Bowls, and the World Cup for Canada. And I'm fortunate enough to be part of our coverage for the World Cup this summer, and so many Stanley Cup Finals and World Juniors of things. So yeah, I'm like, and Masters and everything. It's so lucky. Like I couldn't even fathom doing all this stuff. Like never ever. Uh, I remember watching the Masters when I was a kid, thinking, man, that looks so awesome, but I'm never going to get there. Like I was like, I will never get to Augusta National. And that was as a fan. So to actually have, been there and covered it is, yeah, kind of crazy beyond your wildest dreams. And it's almost, when they ask athletes about, and they always say, well, maybe when I retire, I'll think back about the moments, but not now. I think it's probably the same for me. I think when they kick me out of TSN, which they will eventually, and I'm sitting back in that's when I'll go, holy crap, was I lucky to have been at all these things.
Very nice. Was there ever a point in your professional career, maybe even through school, where you thought broadcasting wasn't really the route that you wanted to go? And if so, was there a thought or maybe a person that got you sort of back on the track towards broadcasting?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Well, first of all, I didn't mention I was going to take phys ed and be a gym teacher. That was my other option. I really went back and forth. I was going to go to McGill and play football and take phys ed. And I went back and forth with Carleton. And actually, the moment that this decided, I think I was right. I think I wrote in my book, one of my books, that I just had this aha moment. But the truth is, my dad was kind of cheap, and we were driving home from McGill. I went down on a tour there, and I remember my dad saying, how are you going to pay for this? Because, if you went to Carleton, you could just stay at home and live in our condo. And it's going to be like, I don't know what school was back then, like $7,000 a year. And I was like, you're not going to help me with that, Dad? And he's like, oh, I'll pay some, but you're going to have to. I was like, holy crap, I don't have any money. And so that's probably the reason I went to Carleton, took journalism, is because it was going to be cheaper. So, but I think first year Carleton was, I hated it. I hated it. It was all this theory crap. And, you didn't get out to do interviews or anything. And so there was a lot of doubts that first year. Then I became a news reporter. That was the only job I could get when I started. And there was a lot of times like covering city council meetings and covering murders and stuff where I just hated the job. And so I probably had a lot of doubts then. And I thought, man, I'm never going to be able to get into sports. There wasn't a lot of sports jobs. So you're full of ton of self-doubt along the way,
Right.
like everybody in every other profession. And so I'm sure it's hard to remember now, but going through my early 20s, I'm sure there was a million times where I thought, what am I doing here? But I think I always liked TV enough, and I kept at the back of my mind that if I kept doing it, that it would work out someday. And I was lucky enough that it did.
That's awesome, man.
Never, by the way, once I got to TSN, I never had a doubt. Like I can honestly say, sure, there's been bad days and such, but there's never been a moment where I've said, like, I've loved it so much that there's never been a moment where I've said I did the wrong thing here. That would be ludicrous, right? How lucky am I to
Nice.
doing all those things you mentioned?
Yeah, it's amazing. You guys have such a great cast over there, and it seems like the rapport between the group is always so amazing, and it makes us watching, and I imagine you guys going in every day makes
Yeah,
the
it's
experience
fun,
that much
right?
better.
You work with people you like, and you work with people that are entertaining, and it's fun, right? It's yeah, especially hosting, I think, is I always wanted to do play-by-play. You guys were asking, like, my first dream was to be like, if you'd have asked 16-year-old James or 18-year-old James, he would have said, I want to be an NFL play-by-play guy. And I was starting to do that at TSN right around the early 2000s. I was starting to do CFL play-by-play, and I loved it. And then they offered me the hockey job, and I really wrestled with it for a while because I'm like, I don't know if, and I'm glad I did it, obviously, for everything you guys mentioned, but I was really torn. Like, I almost said no to it, but then I said, how can you turn down being like national hockey host in Canada? You can't do that. And even though football is my first love, hockey was kind of 1A, right? So yeah, it's been a great gig.
That's awesome. So like through all that time at TSN, you've seen the media landscape and the sports landscape change so much so. How has that affected your thought process when it comes to making great pieces that are meaningful to you?
Man, you guys ask good questions. Wow.
A lot of prep, James. A
Who
lot of
would have
prep.
thought the sweaty podcast is like the new 60 minutes? What was the damn question again?
I was just
I got
asking,
so
like,
taken back by. I want to hear it again. It was so good.
thanks
Come
a
on.
lot, man. I was just saying, you've been at TSN for so long to where you've seen the media landscape and the sports landscape
Yeah.
change so much. How has
Right.
that affected your thought process when it comes to making
Okay.
meaningful pieces for you?
Okay. Uh, I think one thing, and I don't know if this is answering your question really, but if you'd have watched early tapes of me, certainly when you were like 4 years old at preschool and you weren't watching me, I was trying to be funny like all the time. When I hosted Sports Center, if I had 5 intros a show, I was trying to do comedy the entire time, which was really stupid probably, but that's who I thought I was back then. And back then, there weren't that many people that were trying to be funny all the time. And there was a certain time, I'll still be an idiot, I granted, but I kind of toned that down maybe 10 years ago because all of a sudden everybody on TV was trying to do comedy all the time. And I thought, okay, this is stupid. So I think that's one thing where I sort of toned down my act a little bit. Some people might still say I'm an idiot, but that's one thing that that has changed. As far as the pieces I do and such, I don't think things have changed that much. I will still do idiotic pieces because I think that one thing being a news reporter all those years, I did realize that sports should be an escape. And that's the way I've always treated it. So if we do some dumb music video like Bad for Bedard or something, I don't know if you guys saw that one a couple of years ago, but it's the dumbest thing possible. But I'm fully aware of that because I think we should be able to, sports should be an escape. So I will still do that. I still like to mix in the serious stuff here and there and do stories that matter at the same time. So I try to walk that fine line. But yeah, I don't know. The biggest change in the sports landscape is really just everything on social media, right? And just it's just changed so much. You take something like Trade Center, where back in the day, like Bob McKenzie was breaking everything, and now like most of the time the teams release their own trades or we're just reacting to things instead of breaking news. Like I think that's what made Trade Center back in the day was everybody would tune in because we would break all the trades. And now it's not really that. Everything comes out on Twitter or Instagram or whatever beforehand, and the information just comes so fast. There used to be this big war, TSN versus Sportsnet on trade deadline day. Who's going to get the trade first? Is it Elliot or Bob? And I think 5-6 years ago, it became irrelevant because if Bob got it, it was 10 seconds before, or somebody got it 10 seconds before. So nobody cares. And I think we all realize nobody cared about that. So it's just more about just doing the show and doing your analysis. I don't know if I kind of jumped all over the place with that answer, but that's
No,
the best
absolutely.
I
I
got.
mean, we even saw that when we started this podcast and our initial shooting schedule, we would record and post the next week, but we realized that no one really cared what we posted the following week. And so it really is
Right.
that revolving door of getting your content out today. You need to get it out now.
Oh, I tell you, like, you've probably seen, and I'm sorry about this, and I'm sorry to all your viewers. Like, because of the book, I was kind of doing this mass sort of tour of, book signings and podcasts, and I happened to do like 3 in one day, just because my schedule's been busy. So you get a day off and you'll do 3. So I did like Chicklets and this one out west, like Sakaris and Price, and it's Johnny Lazarus guy, great guy in the States. And they all like, they're so fast in putting out the clips that suddenly like my feed is just like 20 clips of me. And then all my buddies are like going, holy crap, dude, you're like, get off my timeline, right? Because you just have to see my ugly mug in this room over and over and over again, telling story after story after story. And I mean, it's great. It's what you have to do for the book, but you do kind of get sick of yourself very quickly. So that is the amazing thing. Part of it to me is just how quickly content gets spun around and out there, right?
For
Now,
sure.
James, this one is a little bit less pressure. I have a few revolving theories around it, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer it because I've had this theory for years.
That's
Are
good.
we ever going to find out who the quizmaster is?
I will tell you right now. I want to see if I have a photo of
Oh
him.
my God.
So, I mean, I think that I'm not like, you're not like breaking news. I've probably said it somewhere before, but no one ever listens to me. We kept it like a top secret for years, but it's a guy by the name. I'm trying to see if I have a photo of him so I can go into my thing here, see if he shows up in my the people part of the photo album. Isn't it weird when you get the people part of your photo album and like
Yeah.
some of them are your family members and then some of them are you guys like you met once and somehow they crawl up in your
You're like,
thing.
who is this guy?
Yeah, who is this guy? I don't have a picture of him right here, unfortunately. That's a travesty. But Steve is he was the he looks like Larry David. He talks like Larry David. He basically is Larry David. He was the managing editor of the Hockey News for years, and then TSN brought him on in like 2005. And he's this really sort of nerdy, geeky encyclopedia of hockey. And as much as it pains me to say it, he's been so invaluable to our coverage because he's just smart. He's this old school guy. He doesn't like, he writes everything on paper. Like I think he still does it to this day. He's sort of semi-retired. All he does is the quiz now, but he's got these binders at home, like binders with paper. Every hockey game, he will write with a pencil, the score and who all the goal scorers were. And I'm like, Steve, there's computers for this. You don't need to do this. But that's the way he would do things. And that's the way his mind worked. And so, yeah, he's been doing the quiz forever. Everybody thinks I'm the quiz master. Like when I go out on the streets and stuff, people yell, quiz master. And I guess, technically I'm the guy who does the quiz. So I am. But yeah, Steve Dryden is his name there. Breaking news for you right here.
Steve Dryden.
Part of me thought
put it out there.
Part of me thought it was producer Tim at first.
That would have been a good guess as well.
Was it producer Tim on Twitter who had the question mark for the photo?
Yes.
It was.
It was. And I think the quizmaster had that as well. Like back when we used to make a big deal out of it being a big mystery. I think somewhere along the way we might have even shown him on camera. Like one of the quizzes you guys might have missed, but maybe when he retired, because he, like I said, he just does the quiz now. The funny thing is he's obsessed with that quiz. Like he will, I think he still spends 40 hours a week, like thinking up 100 questions and then narrowing them down to 4 questions, which is insanity. But that's the way he is.
That's awesome.
Going back to trade deadline and free agent frenzy, how that's kind of changed, and now it's you got more gimmicks that go along with it. My favorite thing that you guys have ever done is puck over glass. Hey ref, kiss my another delay of game. That's my favorite.
The fact that you remember that, I love that.
So my name. That's the best one.
Did you? Well, so backstory, and this is probably what started the insanity. We've done three songs now. I try to only do them every 3 years or so because, again, they are so dumb. I don't want people to think that we're musicians or anything. I've had people, like when we did Bad for Bedard the other year ago, these people were like, you get the people online going, this is so cringe. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly the point. That's what we're going for. So puck over glass. So we were back when we had the national rights and we were doing the playoffs. There was a year where there was just a ton of puck over glass penalties. And so, you're in there every night doing the playoffs. And we started to at some point, I don't know if it was my idea, it might have been one of our producers said, let's do a tote board. So on the big screen behind us, we'd say, all right, let's check out the tote board tonight, kind of like a telethon. It would be up to 12, 15. And then we started doing like special effects around the tote board, like explosions and stuff. And then I was driving home from work one night and saying, "Oh, we got to do something more. We got to do something new." And literally, I've always been an amateur songwriter. That's kind of been my when I was young, when we were in like a really crappy garage band, and I've always wrote songs. I had a couple of really talented musician buddies who I would write tunes, but I was never musically inclined enough to actually be able to. I don't know how to play guitar or play piano, so but I could hear the tune in my head, and if I gave it to my buddies, they could write it on guitar or whatever. So I was driving home from work, and I'm like, what about a song? And that's the tune just kind of went into my head, and I was like, puck over glass. And that was the first phrase I remember coming up with, like,
That's
hey,
one,
ref,
man.
kiss my ass. And by the time in that half an hour drive from TSN to my house, I'd come up with the chorus and the two verses or whatever. And I had basically the entire song, but like I could hear it, but so Lester McLean, who's this guy who's he doesn't work at TS anymore. He was on my podcast, the Rubber Boots podcast, really talented musician. I called him the next day, and I recorded the song on my phone and said, I need you to put this to music. But 3 days later, we were doing a video with a full gospel choir behind us. And people say, what are you proud of from your career? And I could probably say all the events that I've covered and everything, but the fact that you and people still, whenever there's a puck over glass penalty in a big game in the playoffs, people will write me on social media or whatever and say that song is still in my head. And I think that's the greatest compliment you can give, right? That we wrote something that's a worm in people's head. The sad thing to me is the follow-up to that was a song that we did called Don't Take My Goal Away, which was about video review. And it is equally stupid, but it never caught on the way Puck Over Glass did. Like we did a boy band. If you guys haven't seen this or don't remember it, go to YouTube when we get off and just YouTube Don't Take My Goal Away. So, if Puck Over Glass was kind of like I don't know what kind of song it would be, but Don't Take My Goal Away, I wrote that thinking of a boy band. And so when we recorded the video, it was like O-Dog and Noodles and I think Marty Biron. And then like Gino Retta makes a cameo and Bob McKenzie does a rap. And with the whole video is shot like an NSYNC kind of video. It's like it's the stupidest thing ever. Like we try to do all these sexy shots with like rain pouring over us and everything. And I personally love that song because it's just about long video reviews, but it never took off like Don't Take My like Puck Over Glass. So someday awesome. I'll put an album. And Bad for Bedard was just, my boss is always bugging me, like, you got to do another song. You got to do another song. And I'm like, I don't want to push it and, really jump the shark kind of thing on this. But Bad for Bedard, there was so much hype about everybody tanking that year that I said, okay, I want to do a country song because I was just getting into country and my daughter's really into country. So Bad for Bedard was my attempt at doing a country song. Anyway, so stupid, but fun. Those are the moments, by the way, guys, when you're shooting those videos, those are the moments where I'm like, God, I love my job, because the fact that TSN will let me do this stuff and not ask any questions, and we're just doing the dumbest shit possible. Like, it couldn't be dumber. And sometimes we'll be filming the scenes. If you watch that Don't Take My Goal Away, there's some scenes where I'm like up against a brick wall, like trying to pretend look sexy, and it's just so stupid. And we'd like stop, like the outtakes would be way funnier because we're just cracking up the entire time, and getting somebody like Darren Drager or somebody you never see being stupid like that to be stupid is something I enjoy greatly.
Out of curiosity, would TSN let you guys keep the blooper reel for that?
Yeah, like there probably are. I mean, when we used to do, I don't know if we never put out bloopers for the music videos. We really should have. Like, I've done some other stuff. We did a piece called The Hangover once, which a lot of the ideas come from like serious questions. Like the evil quizmaster, when he was my boss, he would always suggest doing a serious story. Like once upon a time, he suggested I do a story about backup goalies, a serious feature. And that ended up being, this is another one sort of before your time, but you can look it up. I've done about 4 really stupid skits with Roberto Luongo. And the first one that started, Jamie McLennan was Luongo's backup in Florida. And the quizmaster wanted me to do a serious story on being a backup. And by the time I got to Florida, I'd morphed it into this idea where the backup, I was thinking to myself, the backup must hate the starter because he's the guy preventing him from getting starts. And so we did this whole scene where Noodles tries to runs over Luongo with the Zamboni. We have this stupid trash test dummy in it. It's like, again, it's so dumb. And that sparked us doing like 4 different really stupid features with Luongo. But we used to run the outtakes of those at the end. The thing I was getting into was he asked me to do something about Stanley Cup hangovers. And we ended up going to LA and doing a takeoff of the movie The Hangover, where basically we lose one of the members of our panel and we go to the LA Kings, who are the Stanley Cup champs. So we probably did this in like 2013 or 14. And you should watch it too. I end up with the Mike Tyson tattoo on my face and everything. It's very stupid, but there are, if you watch that on YouTube, at the end of it, there are bloopers. So we did it for those pieces. We just never did it for the songs, but we probably should have.
Getting back into your newest book, which we can see behind you there, Certified Beauties. We have one
product placement, baby.
Of course.
Absolutely. Make sure you buy that. It's on Amazon. You get it at your local Indigo. I'm sure James can tell us where else you can get it. I would love to ask, because we had Cabby on the podcast a while back, and he was always talking about how hockey players are the best people. And he would say that it's just hard to crack them. And his shtick was always, he would tell them, smell my fingers. And so through your book, Certified Beauties, it's about a bunch of the greatest untold stories around the NHL.
Right.
What motivated you to bring these stories to light and kind of paint this picture of hockey players, how they truly are in their natural habitat?
Well, first of all, like, I think, in the same vein of what Cabby did, and I think Cabby was great at it. The reason Cabby was so successful, especially during that run where he did, with the Score, and then with TSN where he did those on the street things. And what made him great is he could show hockey players and athletes in a different light, right? It was the same with me, where I would hear over and over how boring hockey players are. And if you just watch the games and watch intermission and pregame interviews, it's not wrong to have that sentiment, because it's the same old dumb questions that we ask and the same old dumb answers about getting pucks in deep. And so, yeah, they are boring. And the culture around what we do in broadcasting for games kind of makes them look boring. But I had enough guys, all those years on the panel, I had enough guys sitting next to me, ex-players, current players, ex-coaches, that were super entertaining when they were sitting next to me on the panel, right? Because you have a lot of time to just sit around and tell stories when you're watching the games. It's not like a play-by-play guy who's working the whole time. We'll do our pregame show, do our intermissions, and the rest of the time you're watching the game, eating pizza or popcorn, and there a lot of the time they're telling you stories. And so, first of all, I think I heard enough good stories to say, man, this would be a book. But I also was sort of out to prove to people that hockey players were not boring. And I kind of had this thesis that if you did get them away from the rink, away from those scrums, that they do have stories to tell, because I think hockey is a sport that just breeds stories. And so that's kind of what was the premise of the first book that I wrote, which was Beauties, to just, get guys to tell me one great story. And my idea was, no matter how boring a guy is or appears, he's got to have at least one great story. It doesn't have to be his story, right? It doesn't have to be something exciting he did, but he had to have one crazy teammate, or he had to be involved in one crazy game that's worthy of a chapter in a book. And I was really super surprised to be proven right, that that everybody's got at least a couple of great stories. And when you get them, if you can get them to sit down with you for a beer or just on the phone, away from the rink, they have really good stories. And so, Certified Beauties is the sequel, because once I did the first book, I had a guys crawling out of the woodwork saying, man, you got to talk to this dude. You got to talk to this dude, because this guy's got an amazing story. This guy's got an amazing story. And that's why I ended up writing the second one. But yeah, hockey players aren't boring. It's just the nature of everything we do around coverage of games that kind of makes them boring, I think.
Dude, and even when you think about the sport of hockey, like, you got to be a little insane to play hockey. And
it's nuts, right?
If you're playing the position, like if you're playing the play style like Matt Rempe's or Radko Gudas or the Revos, right, like, this is a terrifying position. You're in the NFL, except on skates and way faster.
Yeah, and just the nature of the game too, like how long the season is. I asked Matthew Tkachuk as a chapter at the end of Certified Beauties, and there's I don't set any rules when I ask these guys to tell me stories. I say, tell me anything you want. I don't care. It doesn't even have to be around hockey. I don't even care. Just tell me a great story. But you get a lot of guys to tell you about pranks, right? And Matthew's chapter is about the Panthers the year before the cup that he says was the biggest bunch of beauties ever. That he'd never been on a team that had just so many crazy guys that just pranked each other. You mentioned Radko Gudas there. One of the stories in the chapter, Kachuk, they all wear those Lululemon ABC pants, and that was like their uniform for the road. They all kind of wear the same khakis. And Kachuk, one of the gags was to cut the zipper out of a guy's pants at the beginning of a road trip, like just as they were leaving, so he'd have no other pants. And Kachuk had a running thing with, I think it was Nick Cousins. And so he went to cut out the zipper of Nick Cousins' pants. They were going to the Stanley Cup final. And he cut out, because the lockers are so close. I think this was once they had arrived in, who did they lose to that year? Vegas, Vegas. I think they'd arrived in Vegas for day one of the cup final, and they were like, maybe had a skate or something. And so everybody was in the dressing room. They were going to media day, and Kachuk snuck off the ice early and cut the zipper out of Cousins' pants, except it was the locker next to him, and he cut the zipper out of Radko Gudas's pants. And you imagine when you realize, and by the way, I've told a lot of stories on podcasts. I didn't tell that one. I saved that one for you guys. So you imagine his fear when he realized he cut out Radko Gudas's. And he said, I don't know if you could ever see it, but if you look at, like, Radko Gudas just went out and did media day with no crotch in his pants, basically. So, but the point I'm getting to, which I always go astray, is that I asked Kachuk at the end of that chapter, I said, why is it, do you think, that so many guys, like all these pranks, they're so juvenile, and why is it so important? And he said that the season is so long in hockey, it's such a grind, that you have to have a reason to come to the rink, to look forward to the coming to the rink, because another Paul Maurice practice in January is not enough to make you'll go crazy if you don't. So the idea of coming to the rink to pull a prank on one of your teammates is like the type of thing that keeps them going all year round. And with this Florida team, it was nonstop. It was every day, somebody moving somebody's car, somebody doing something, somebody else. And he truly believes that sort of set the foundation for the team that went to the final and then won 2 Stanley Cups the next 2 years, is you just have to have that idiocy to get you through. So I found that kind of fascinating.
One of my most favorite times of year is waking up on that Thursday morning in April, getting the Caesar going, and watching golf from Thursday to Sunday. Yeah. 2019 probably is my favorite tournament to watch, if not one of. What was it like to see, Tiger kind of come back and have a redemption story, and kind of just walk us through your experience with that?
Yeah, it's funny. I obviously wrote that down as one of the chapters for the book I was telling you about that I'm working on. And I kind of wrote that whole chapter. I actually wrote a chapter about those 3 years together, because the year after that was COVID.
Yeah.
The COVID Masters, which was a freaky Masters. Like, it was actually one of the greatest ones I ever covered, because there was nobody there. So I could just, stand 5 feet away from Tiger when he, on Thursday, I followed Tiger that year, and the gallery was his then girlfriend, the one he's not with anymore, his agent, Peyton Manning, and me. Those were the 4 people following Tiger, which was just insane, right?
That's awesome.
But so, and then there was another year, the year before, where my dad had died, and so I tied all that in. But yeah, it was so surreal. The one trick about the Masters with us is, a lot of times people are like, where were you when the shot was hit? And quite often, because I have to do an hour post show when it's over, I usually end up watching the back nine from our studio set, because it's just so hard. You can't bring your cell phone on the golf course. The old wooden scoreboards. It's if it's close, like that year Tiger won, if you remember, around 12-13, there was like 9 guys in the hunt. That was a crazy hour or so where everybody was in it, right? And if you're not watching that on TV, you have no idea what's going on. And I can't go on TV afterwards. But I did walk the front 9 with Tiger, and there's still a moment I remember by my boy Puffy, who I talk about often. He was on my podcast, and he's one of our producers for our show, but he's a great guy. You guys would love him. And me and him were walking with Tiger, and Tiger made this two putt on 9, which nobody will ever remember, but it was he was right at the back of the green. It was an impossible two putt. And I think when he parted, he was either tied for the lead or one up or whatever it was going to 10T. And the euphoria in the crowd is something I'll never forget. Like one of the coolest moments of my life, just the buzz. There's like a 50-yard walk from 9 to 10T. And people were just losing their effing minds thinking, oh my God, is this going to happen? Like Tiger's going to the back 9 tied for the lead or whatever. And, as journalists, broadcasters, you're supposed to stay neutral and everything, right? And you're supposed to be professional. Well, Tiger walks by me and Puffy, and Puffy just can't help himself. And he's like, you got this, Tiger! You got this! And I just started laughing. I'm like, Puff, we're working for TSN. We're not supposed to do this. But it was so funny. So that was a surreal day. And the crazy thing about that day is, if people forget it, there was weather was coming in. So they actually teed off early, and Tiger won the Masters at like 2:00. And TSN CTV, like they bring a bunch of clients down every year on a private plane, and the boss was there, and we were done so early. Like the boss is like, hey, we got a couple extra seats on the plane. And so I literally did the post-game show, got an Uber to the airport, got on this plane, and I was home in my sweatpants at like 6:00 on Masters Sunday after the greatest Masters victory ever. So it was a very strange day. But the only thing I was thinking, like when Rory won this year, like I when Tiger won that, I said, this will be the greatest Masters I ever see. And then I don't know that Rory's might have beat it. And I don't mean, maybe the accomplishment of what Tiger did is bigger and because it's Tiger Woods, but that wasn't the most dramatic ending, right? When the way Tiger won it. Whereas Rory's was like a freaking 12-part Netflix series. It was so the ups and the downs and the context of the last 10 years of his career. And he hit some of the greatest shots ever, and then followed by the worst shots ever. And so I might have to write a chapter about that too, because that was I don't know. Ask me in 20 years what I'll remember as the greatest Masters ever, because I'm not sure which one of those it is.
Given the time of year, I have to ask you, World Juniors. My favorite moment is the 2009. Can you believe it? Jordan Eberle's tying goal.
Yeah.
What's that experience like for you, just given the magnitude of that tournament and how it's blown up, I don't know, the last 25, 30 years, and you're at the forefront of it every year with Bob, and around Christmas, and it's a different country, and like just the magnitude of the World Juniors itself.
Well, your last two questions, I mean, if people ask me my favorite event every year, and I'm lucky to do a bunch, but it's a real toss-up between the Masters and the World Juniors. The World Juniors is so ingrained in my soul. It's, and partly because when I started doing it was that 5-year run of gold medals. So when they were all so spectacular, like there was so much they could have lost so many different ways all those years, not 2005, but 2006, 7, 8, 9. So that Eberle thing is, it's funny. We did a story with Eberle last year because it came back to Ottawa, and one of my producers found somewhere buried in our archives, I guess the camera that's on the set with me and Bob was rolling the whole time when he scored that goal. And so I got to see myself, which I didn't even know it existed until last year. I got to see myself reacting to that goal. And I was mic'd, right? And I was just kind of like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I sounded like a 14-year-old girl or something, but it was that's the way I felt at the time. So it's, Bob's not here this year. It's going to be weird. Bob's officially retired even from the World Juniors, and it's going to be very strange, I think, for all of Canada and for you guys and for me on Boxing Day when he's not there. Frankie Corrado is joining our team, who's an awesome analyst. He's going to be fantastic.
Nice.
But we're going to miss Bob, because he was like, to me, Bob was always the World Juniors. I was the guy beside him, but it was really Bob. So they're going to miss that, but it's so fun. I mean, the last 2 years weren't that great. people always ask me if I'm a fan, right? And I don't really cheer for much. Like I don't really have an NHL team. I cheer for the Niners still in the NFL, but I don't really have many teams. The job does suck the fan out of you somewhat, but that doesn't hold true for Canada. And I do root hard for, I'd be neutral as a broadcaster, but I root hard for Canada at the juniors, at the Olympics, whatever it may be. It's hard. You can't take that out of you. When Crosby scored the goal in 2010, I remember like we were right behind the net and people were jumping all over each other. And I want to do the same, right? I wanted to pour beer over Bob's head and go crazy. But you got to, the journalism school in me was saying, no, you got to be cool. Don't react. Just do your thing. But that's a tester for those things. And the World Juniors, I don't really get nervous in my job anymore, but I do get nervous watching Canada at the World Juniors because of that, because I'm a Canadian, but also because it matters to our network. Like when they go out in the quarterfinals, it's a bit of a disaster for us, right? Because it's not the same audience watching Czechia and Finland play in the semifinals or for gold. So I get nervous. That's one of the only times I get nervous anymore is watching the games when Canada's involved.
Can you think of the biggest on-screen moment you've been a part of in your career, where like whether that was a big trade, a big signing, like what stands at the forefront for you with that?
No, I mean, it depends how you define that. Like on screen, I mean, the Crosby goal will probably always be the highlight of my career. Now, I wasn't on screen, obviously, when the goal happened. I was on, 15 minutes later talking about it, or 10 minutes later. So that'll be a moment that's hard to pass in my career. We'll see what happens in Milan, but to have that in Vancouver and the way it ended and the drama involved there, I think will be tough to beat. Now, actually, I'm trying to think if anything like while I was actually on camera, something dramatic happening. It's probably just a trade or breaking news of something somewhere along the way. I'll tell you the toughest thing I ever had to do was when Duthie died a couple of years ago. I had to come on and break that news to Canada. And that was very difficult. That's one of the hardest things I've ever done because obviously he was a good friend. And that was just, I just remember thinking, don't, you got to be a pro here. Don't break down and start crying. But yeah, that was a tough moment knowing that, I found out the day before, but nobody else knew. And they wanted TSN to be the ones who told people. So I came in the next morning and we sort of planned to do this announcement at noon or whatever it was. That was a weird thing, but I don't know. I've never been, I don't think I've been on camera when any hugely dramatic thing has happened, unless you count all the millions of trades on Trade Center for, fourth round draft picks for seventh defenseman.
Which is every year.
Yeah, which is pretty much every trade I ever do on sports on the Trade Center. Yeah.
You mentioned on the Bar Down podcast that you grew up a Chicago Blackhawks fan. I was curious with Bedard's recent success. Is that Chicago Blackhawks fandom at all bubbling up? Are you excited to get back into that?
I'll admit I was a bandwagon when I was a kid. Like, I don't know if I said this on Bar Down or not, but I was a Hawks fan. That was my first love. And I do still get I probably said this on Bar Down. I get a visceral reaction to those white Hawks jerseys. Like that does take me back to me falling in love with hockey at whatever, 7, 8 years old, because those jerseys were just something I was completely in love with. I became an Islander fan because Denny Potvin went there and they won all the Stanley Cups. So I could easily get accused of being a big bandwagon guy. The 80s were amazing for me as a kid because I was a Niners and an Islanders fan, and they both won. Niners won 4 Super Bowls and the Islanders won 4 Stanley Cups. And I thought this is the greatest thing ever, being a sports fan. And then there's been nothing but trouble since then. But I really don't root for anybody. A lot of people say I'm a Sens fan because I'm from Ottawa. I do try to stick up for the Sens a lot because when you're in Toronto, it's everything Leafs. Are you guys all Leaf fans?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And I get it. So the guys in the studio will give me a hard time saying I'm a Sens fan, but I just try to make sure they get coverage because, the other Canadian teams can get a little bit obliterated sometimes by Leafs coverage. So I'm always standing up for the fact, because I'm from Ottawa, hey, make sure the Sens highlights are up there too, kind of thing. And I have family in Ottawa, but I'd like to see them win, but really, I don't care. I don't sit and have an active rooting any NHL team really.
Well, circling back to Canada, Olympics are coming up, and you mentioned it's hard to suck the fandom when it comes to, national
Yeah.
pride. How are we feeling about, we know how good the Canadians' defense and forward core is. How are we feeling in that? Any ideas? Bennington might start. Are we going to see Logan Thompson
Yeah,
maybe?
I mean,
Any
look at
thoughts on
first
that?
of all, I don't pretend to be the expert on any of these things. The insiders would know more than me, although I don't think they know anything right now. I would be shocked if Bennington doesn't start just because Cooper seems like a loyal guy. And, what he did, if you go watch that, whatever you call it, final game, golden, I don't know, what do you call the final of the Four Nations? I mean, it was such a dinky tournament, but yet it was so awesome, right? I was like, such a made up thing that turned out to be so great. But whatever they gave him, the championship game of that tournament, like he did make like 3 or 4 ludicrous saves that saved the entire thing for Canada. So I think and he's had a couple of good games lately. So I think unless he's just, completely falling on his ass, that Cooper's going to start the tournament with him. Uh, I don't know, I don't even, it's hard to get inside Coop's head as to who, if it's Logan Thompson's his guy or who's going to end up being the second guy. Logan Thompson certainly has deserved, for his numbers, maybe a better shot at it. Look, it doesn't really matter what we say right now because, having covered 2010 and 2002, I think it was, where Cujo started and then Brodeur took over. And then 2010, when Brodeur started and Louis took over. I don't think it matters really who starts the first game. It's going to matter, if what's going to be interesting is if Binnington starts, which I think he will, if he, like in Four Nations, he was just kind of okay and Cooper stuck with him. But if he really, let's say he gave up 6 and they lost 6-3 or something in one of the round robin games, would he then still stick with him if his numbers still weren't good in the NHL? That would be the real test to it, I think. And I think in that case, Olympic tournament, Four Nations was so short. Olympic tournament's a little bit longer. And so he'd probably give somebody else a shot and then see how it goes, right?
I will say,
go ahead, Michael.
Go ahead, Taylor. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, going to the NFL seems to be wide open this year. You're looking at a Bills fan. Michael's a Steelers fan. Osama's an Eagles fan. What are your thoughts?
You guys know that the 3 best teams in the league are in the NFC West, right? You guys are aware of that?
I agree.
AFC
I think the Rams. I think the Rams
2 best.
are the best team in the NFL.
Hey, what? Oh, you mean the Niners and the Rams?
Well, I was going to ask, what do you think about the Niners? Are they going to?
I think the Rams and Seattle are both. I think the Rams are the best team in the league. Seattle, though, is pretty, like, Sam Darnold, resurrected in San Francisco, obviously, is really good. I do believe, if I can take my Niners cap off, and I would honestly say that if the Niners hadn't got all those season-ending injuries on D, I really think they'd be right there with the Rams as the best team in the league. Like if you put Bosa and Fred Warner and Williams all in that lineup right now, plus they had 4 other defensive guys hurt. Like Robert Saleh has been unbelievable this year because they have no business being where they are. Like that D was as decimated could be. I know you don't want to talk Niners the entire time, but if those guys were healthy, I would think the Niners would have a realistic chance of winning the Super Bowl. I think as it is now, they probably are a wild card, maybe win one game, beat the Eagles or Tampa or something, and then probably lose to somebody like the Rams or the Seahawks or something. But yeah, I mean, I'd love the Bills are, maybe it's all my time in Toronto, but I like the Bills. I don't think you can live here for 20 years and not sort of get sucked into the Bills. And I just think Josh Allen's an incredibly likable guy. And so I wouldn't mind if the Bills won. Sorry, Steelers and what was the other team?
I'm an Eagles fan. Sadly.
Eagles.
Yeah, hurts.
God, I hate them. No, I was actually super happy last year when they won. Just because I was sick. Like in my time covering Super Bowls, it's been first of all, I got, how many did Brady go to? 10, whatever it was.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, as much as I admire it and, when I'm writing a book or whatever, it's going to be a great chapter to look back on. I think in 30 years, we'll go, how amazing was that? But I did get sick of it every single year covering the Patriots. And the KC, I was starting to feel the exact same thing, where you just, at a certain point, you want a new story. And so I thought it was pretty cool the way the Eagles completely demolished them last year. You must have had a heck of a day. Like, that's a fantasy, not to just win a Super Bowl, but to win a Super Bowl when it's never in doubt. Like, even like by halftime, I guess you could still have a little bit of doubt because it was Mahomes, but that game
It was the Coupe de Jean pick six. After that point, I was
yeah, that was it. I mean,
yeah,
to coast home for the Niners back in my day, we beat the Steve Young's. Well, first of all, Joe Montana had a couple like that, but then Steve Young beat the Chargers like it was like 42-6 or something. I think it ended up being 40-20, but that game was over. And there's nothing better as a fan than watching the entire second half of a Super Bowl, knowing it's already over.
You're chilled out. You're sitting back with your cigar.
Yeah, that's the best instead of sweating it down to the last second. But I don't know what's wrong with your Eagles right now. They're messy.
We talk about it every week, and it's just interesting that AJ Brown complains when they're winning and he's not getting the ball, but he's clearly content when they're losing and he is getting the ball.
Yeah.
So there's something wrong in the locker room.
There's definitely something off there. And Jalen Hurts, like that first Super Bowl when they lost to KC, I thought he was so awesome in that game. Like he was so I had so much. I'm like, this guy's going to win like 3 of these things. And even last year, he played basically the perfect game. And then I don't really understand the regression this year.
So weird.
Really weird. It is weird.
It is odd.
We never
Steelers. I like Steelers. The same thing. I've always admired the Steelers because I like Tomlin, but I'm not a big Rodgers fan anymore. And I don't know, just weird vibe with him.
I loved Rodgers in Green Bay, and I've
I
probably been a fan for probably 10, maybe 12 years now, and I've seen nothing but 10-7, 9-8, or start the year 11-0 and get bounced by Cleveland in the first round, basically lose the game in the first quarter. So I'd like to see a change maybe in the GM office, if not the coach. But last week Aaron Rodgers looks like kind of his vintage self with BK, but nothing just seems to click at
the most likable Aaron Rodgers has been in the last 10 years is stuff he's done with Cabby. Like Aaron Rodgers is one of the guys who loved Cabby. And every time they did a bit together, I was like, this is really good. Aaron Rodgers seems like a really good guy when he's with Cabby. So shout out to Cabby for being able to do that. Because the rest of the times he seems like a punk, frankly.
I agree with you, man.
Not Cabby, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, for sure. James, man, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come on this podcast. We have a question
my pleasure, boys.
We have a question that we love to ask all of our guests as they come through the locker room.
Yeah.
We would love to ask you, what athletes do you think are the most athletic from what sport?
Ooh. That's such a good question.
Cab said football. Donovan Bennett said basketball.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we're doing mainstream, like that's a difficult question because I think soccer players, I'm in World Cup mode right now, I think are the fittest, like to run for 90 minutes and not have to, don't make any mistake because it's such a precise game. But yeah, some of the things like the wide receivers do. I think I'm going to answer the question in a multi-tiered way. Okay. So like the fittest athletes, I think soccer players, and also some of the Olympic sports, like cross-country skiing is insanely hard. I was on one of the other podcasts talking about biathlon. Like you think about, I did a little bit of cross-country skiing when I was young, and I was like, that was the most tired I ever had to do. I think I did one race in high school, and I was I'm like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. And to think of these guys like skiing like that with their heart rate around 200 and then stopping and trying to shoot little friggin' targets 100 yards away is unbelievable. So there's that. I think one of the hardest things to do in the world is maybe to hit a baseball that's curving, Yamamoto curving 18 different ways and going 100 miles an hour. I think the hardest position to play in sport is quarterback in the National Football League. I can remember the first time I got to go to a Niners game was the 98 NFC Championship game against Brett Favre and the Packers, and I had a sideline pass. Bad memories. We played awful and the Packers won, but I can remember, I'd covered CFL before, but I never covered NFL in person. And the difference in the size of the defensive linemen and the linebackers. And, neither Steve Young or Brett Favre was a super tall guy. And I remember standing on the sidelines thinking, how do they do this? Like how do they see anything? Like you can make an argument like Doug Flutie when he played in the NFL is like one of the greatest athletes ever, because how the hell did he see anything? Even a guy like Brock Purdy, it's happening so fast, and these guys are so big that I just think their minds are little computers what they do. So that's a multifaceted way of answering the questions, and I've probably left some sports out. And I think hockey players are amazing too in what they do. Like the way Connor McDavid moves on the ice is ludicrous. So I haven't really answered your question. If I had the greatest athletes, that's so hard.
Just
I
think
think
about
the
your
best
next
way to
book,
think about it, that Cab put it in perspective for us, was like, if you were to take these athletes and put them in other sports, where would they thrive, and I should say, where can you teach them the skills to thrive versus where is it more inherent athleticism?
The only test that's ever been done, and I wish they do this again. They try to bring it back, but when I was a kid, they had this thing called Superstars, which I don't know if it ever creeps onto your Instagram feed. Like there's video of Wayne Gretzky racing against like Pele and Sugar Ray Leonard. So and Superstars, when I was like 8 years old, this was the coolest thing ever because it came on ABC on every Saturday. And basically, I thought it was, in my mind, this was the greatest sporting event in the world. This was bigger than the Super Bowl. This is bigger than the World Cup because it had athletes competing against each other. Reality, they flew them down to like Florida or the Bahamas for like 3 days. They probably all drank their faces off, but they competed in, what they did was they took all these athletes from different sports and they made them compete in like 10 different events, kind of like a little decathlon. And so you had Wayne Gretzky, you had Pele, you had Sugar Ray Leonard, you had NFL guys, you had baseball guys. I think Herschel Walker was in it one year, this soccer player named Brian Budd, who played for the Vancouver Whitecaps, won it like 5 years in a row. So there was like a 50-meter run, like an 800-meter run, a swimming, like a 100-meter freestyle, a weightlifting competition. So that whatever it was, to add up to 10 events, and the soccer player kicked everybody's ass every year. So that's why I'll answer soccer, but I don't know in the context of what you're talking about if that's actually true, because I think you can make a case for NBA, you can make a case for NFL, you can make a lot of good cases.
Yeah, I think every time I've heard this question, it's showing me how impressionable I am because my mind has swayed once again. I initially started on hockey, then went to football with Cab, then went to basketball.
I should be making the case for hockey because that's more my full-time job. But look at I will say, like, just the stuff that guys are doing now, the stuff that guys are doing on the ice, the way that receivers catch balls now with one hand sideways, it's become like routine now, right? That Odell Beckham catch was so crazy, whatever it was 10 years ago now. Every weekend in like high school highlights.
Exactly.
Right?
Traylon Burks hit one of those 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So, and even in the NBA, there's just the things guys are doing now are just, we're at a crazy time in sports where guys are doing superhuman things all the time. You could also make a case for gymnastics, right? Yeah. Like the things that those guys do on like what do you call it? The rings or whatever. You can tell I've never done gymnastics as a professional broadcaster, but just insane time for sport.
James, man, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, giving your insight and getting sweaty with the boys. Take this opportunity to tell the people where they could find you online and what you're working on.
Well, let's see. World Juniors is probably the next thing people will see me on besides the odd Leaf game. So that'll be in Minnesota this year. Big deal for Canada, of course, because 2 straight exits in the quarterfinals. I got a crazy year ahead, actually, because I'm going to Super Bowl in San Francisco, and then I'm flying straight from Super Bowl to the Olympics, which is going to be insane to see McDavid and McKinnon, those boys, in the Olympics. And then I have the World Cup in the summer, which I can't wait for. And you guys just I think you guys are at the perfect age, when I was growing up, soccer was kind of my first love. And the idea of a World Cup being in Canada was so ludicrous that, I think it's amazing it's going to happen. So, going to be a crazy year, and this bad boy. Oh, geez. Sorry. Sorry.
No
I have my
worries.
computer set on top of a couple of books, so
in your old books, right?
I'm not looking up at my thing. Yeah, it's actually sitting on top of Wayne Gretzky's '99 or something like that. But yeah, so just Certified Beauties, collection of great hockey stories. I think people will love it. And that other book, I think you were the first guys I told you about it. I don't know when that's going to be out. Probably not for a couple of years, but that's what I'm working on now.
That's awesome. We'll keep our eyes out, and we all have our own copy of Certified Beauties coming for each of us. James, at the end of every podcast, we try to get a salute and a stay sweaty. Can we get a stay sweaty from you?
Absolutely. Stay sweaty, boys.
Stay
Stay
sweaty.
sweaty.
Thanks, James.
Love it.